Welcome back, y'all, and happy Tuesday. Today, we're going to be talking about our Tennessee Vols at their Pro Day. We're also going to give some updated draft projections. Please do make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. All right, y'all, these are the players that participated today, except for the ones in red. And we know that Keenan Pili had a season-ending knee injury, so at this point, he could probably jog around, but he's not going to be running full speed and cutting and doing things like that. So he obviously was not going to be able to do anything. The one that's kind of a shocker to me is Brew. It does sound like he tweaked his hamstring in the Senior Bowl, and we talked about him leaving practice early. We were hoping that it wasn't an injury, but unfortunately, it sounds like that's exactly what it was. So he couldn't do anything today either. And my heart goes out to both of these guys because they're both really good football players. They're both really good people, too. I mean, great leaders for this team. Everyone has great things to say about them. You never hear a negative word about either one of those guys. So it definitely hurts. Obviously, it's much more of a shocker for Brew. He's able to make it through the entire season relatively healthy. And then in the postseason stuff, he comes up with an injury that keeps him from being able to showcase his speed and stuff, which, I mean, it hurts me because I think that, Brew was about to run it in the 4.4s. You see him cutting the weight and putting in the work and all that. So it's tough, but hopefully somebody's going to pick up both of those guys. So we can see, obviously, that there's a lot of people that did actually get to go today. We're not going to have extensive notes and things like that on everybody. This year was a little bit different compared to last year where we had, everyone's measurements and their times and all of that. This year, I guess they changed the structure of what the media could get just because there was not very much out there. So we're going to start off with James Pierce. I think that he did some on-the-field stuff. I'm not exactly sure what he did. But one of the things that I noticed that I think that he did a great job with was speaking to the media. Now, we've talked about James Pierce draft stock potentially falling because of some off-the-field issues that sounds like someone just made up. I mean, anytime that you start saying, oh, this young college kid is having some girlfriend problems, you know that people are just reaching for stuff at that point. But something else that people were talking about was that he didn't really speak to the media that much. It was, I guess, a little bit concerning, which it shouldn't be too concerning. I mean, he's playing on defense. He's not going to need to talk to the media that much. But either way, I think that he really showed a lot today that he can speak to the media. He did a great job with it. I would give him a solid A, maybe even an A+. He carried himself very, very well right there. So hopefully that will, help his draft stock come up just a little bit more, even though I don't think that it was ever really dropping. Somebody was just throwing things out there to try to get it to drop down some. Next, let's talk about Dylan Samson. Okay, we're going to go to him. So he actually ran his 40 today, and what we heard from the insiders is that it was a sub 4.5. They said anywhere between a 4.46 to a 4.49. That's a lot slower than I thought Dylan Samson was going to run, and he's one of the smaller running backs. And just as a point of reference, all the running backs that ran at the NFL Combine, Dylan Sampson's time, at best, if it's a 4.46, would have been like 12th best out of all the running backs at the NFL Combine. And most of those guys were bigger than Dylan Sampson. And, we've heard it, teams are saying that they like those bigger backs right now because the field is spread out so much. But as I've said, some teams are going to use their brain and say, okay, well, if the big backs can do it because, they can run through folks, then the smaller guys should be able to do it because they can make people miss, right? Like you're going to get them one-on-one inside of the box with linebackers. That should be a battle that you feel like Dylan Sampson can win. So that one's going to be interesting. How did teams grade him after his 40 time? Does his stock drop? Now, it might within all these mock drafts and things like that, but it really only takes one team to have a high grade on Dylan Sampson and to take him. So we'll see what happens there. But he also talked about he wanted to showcase his hands coming out of the backfield. He wanted to show that he's a natural pass catcher because it's something that he couldn't showcase inside of Tennessee's offense as much as he wanted to. So that's something that, like we said, Coach Heupel, moving forward in 2025, we got to throw the football to our running backs just a little bit more. All right, so next, let's talk about Dante Thornton. He ran a 4.30 at the NFL Combine, so there was no need for him to rerun it at his pro day unless he was consistently running like lower 4.2s. Then, yeah, you need to go on out there and get that 4.2 because that could make you millions of dollars if you break 4.3. I'm telling you, man, like just going from a 4.2 anything, going from a 4.3 flat to a 4.2 anything, that looks different. I think that hits a little bit different. So either way, he wanted to showcase that he could run all the routes inside of an NFL route tree, which – I guess, y'all, I don't really buy into that whole notion. To me, it's like an outdated way of thinking. And it's not going to be something that I feel like NFL teams will still be really looking at in like 5 years. They're going to start to say, well, we can tell that he's a really good athlete, so we can teach him how to run this route because it's not hard. Like, it's not rocket science. You know what I'm saying? Like, I teach, I've taught, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds how to run all different types of routes. So if they can learn it, then obviously these guys that are NFL players, they can learn it too. Either way, he wanted to showcase it, and I did get to see him run a couple of routes. I thought that he looked really good in and out of his breaks and things like that. He looks really fast. So hopefully the teams that were there, and it sounds like Pittsburgh really likes him. Hopefully someone's going to try to draft him. I feel pretty good about his opportunities to get picked up. And outside of that, we could talk about Big O. He actually did some offense today. So he worked with the offensive line. And I think that it was Austin Price that would always say that Big O might be a better offensive lineman than he is on defense. Now, I don't know if that's really going to necessarily increase his draft stock that much. It might just help to show that he's got a lot of versatility. So it could add some more value to him. And maybe a team would maybe pick him at some point just based off of that sheer fact that he can play on either line of scrimmage. But if he was going to be playing offensive line, he'd have to play at guard. And this is not a deep guard class, at least not to me. I think that, they've actually got some guys that play at tackle that they're going to try to move to guard. So, I don't think that it's the deepest class for that. And he was clocked at like 20 miles per hour when he was in college. So he would probably be one of the more athletic, if not the most athletic offensive lineman. But without any game film, that's going to be a really, really tough sell. So we will see what happens right there. And I also want to talk about Norman-Lott because he ran his 40 today. At least, that's what I'm understanding is that he did. We don't have any concrete times just yet. Now, if I do hear and see some times, as this thing or after this thing gets posted, then I will post that here inside of the comment section for everyone to see. But he's a guy that literally, man, if he runs a good 40 time, which I think that he will, I think that he could be the fastest tackle in this year's draft if he is, especially if he, came in at about 300 pounds today. So at the Senior Bowl, he was like 295, and then he was 291 at the NFL Combine. But if he comes in and like we'll say very, very close, like within 2 pounds of 300, and if he can run like a 4.8, which I definitely think that he could, that happens, that could move his draft stock up maybe like a full round, just because a lot of times what happens is once these players hit certain metrics, these NFL teams, they really look at them just totally different. Like they're going to watch their film totally different. It's like they're going to try to prove that this player is who they're seeing with those testing numbers because the coaches fall in love with those numbers. And it's the exact opposite if you don't test well. They're going to look at your film and they're going to say, well, I'm not seeing a whole lot here, even if you're doing some really good things. That's just, I guess it's kind of like human nature or it's coaching nature. Either way, I'm looking out to see what his time is. I was hoping that maybe someone could have, gone out of their way to try to find it just because it is such a big deal for him. But we will see. Hopefully, we'll have some information on that at some point soon. And then next we have Big E. He didn't do his bench today, which I've been waiting to see how much he can bench. And I'm sure everyone else was as well. But for whatever reason, he opted not to do that. And I'm not quite sure what he did with the on the field stuff or any of that. But, and really, I'm not too sure what any of the other players did either. I saw some little pictures here and there, but just wasn't that much information. But hopefully all these guys will get picked up. And with that being said, let me show you the players that I do think have the best chance to get drafted, just based off of the entire offseason and everything heading up to the NFL draft. So we're going to start off with James Pierce. I think that he's a top 15 pick, right? I think that he's going to go top 15. Like we said, all this, talk about character issues and all that. I don't buy that. I don't think that it's as serious as people are making it. Is he like a choir boy? Probably not. But I don't know that you really want a choir boy that's going to be rushing, quarterbacks. Reggie White was like a unicorn. You know what I'm saying? So that's not typically how things go. But James Pierce, I think that he's a guy that, as long as his 40 time holds up, because Abdul Carter is going to run his on March the 28th if he does actually run it. And I don't think that James Pierce is necessarily going to be a top 3 pick per se. Like, I don't know if he's going to be able to take Abdul Carter's spot as the top edge rusher taken. Not at this point, but it's still possible. But what I am saying here is that if James Pierce has a faster 40 time than Abdul Carter, than everybody else as an edge rusher inside of this year's draft, then that's going to put him in a really good spot compared to everybody else. And I think that he could potentially end up being top 10 or top 5 if he holds on to that, fastest 40 time in this year's, NFL offseason leading up to the NFL draft. So as long as he doesn't do anything stupid, he's going to go in the first round. And like I said, I feel like he's going to go top 15. So next player, Norman-Lott. I think that he's 2nd to 4th round. Like we said, if he can come in very close to about 300 pounds and run a 4.8 or under 40, he's going to go 2nd round. I have no doubt about that. And if it's 40 time, if it's just like average, like we'll say if he runs, like a 4.9 or like a 5 flat, then he's probably going to go 4th round. But if he does run a really good time, like we said, teams are going to look at him a lot closer. And the more that you look at him, the more that you're going to fall in love with him at that 3 technique. I think he's prototype for that one. So next we have Dylan Samson. Got him from 2nd to 5th. And I just feel like it's going to be based off of how teams are grading him out at this point. How do they look at his 40 time? Which the 40 is not a huge deal for a running back. You don't have to have incredible straight line speed. But I think that, again, whenever you're looking at those metrics, there's, ratios, right? So if this player is this big, then they can run a little bit slower. But if this player is a little bit smaller, then they need to run a little bit faster. See what I'm saying? So there's a scale that they're grading these guys on. And I just don't know. I feel like teams are probably going to be relatively consistent with that. But some teams would say, hey, we watched him on film. We love his game. And really for him, his interviews are going to be just spectacular. He's one of those guys off the field that's going to be something that teams might really value. You might covet that. So I think that Dylan Samson, fingers crossed, man, praying, hoping, wishing, praying that he can go in that 2nd round. But, I'm kind of thinking that it might be closer to about that 3rd round at this point. Next, we have Dante Thornton. I'm thinking that he's a 3rd round to a 5th round. Like we said, teams want to see that he can run that full route tree. I don't think that that's that big of a deal. It's just going to be, again, all based off of, does somebody fall in love with a Dante Thornton? He's the biggest, fastest wide receiver that we've seen at the NFL Combine. So, I think that he's probably going to go. I wouldn't be shocked, man. 3rd, maybe, I don't know about 2nd, but 3rd, I would not be shocked by any means. So next we have Big E. I think that he's probably going to go maybe closer to like the 7th. I got 3rd up here just because some teams might really fall in love with him. Again, we heard that he didn't do his bench press, but, maybe he redid his 40. Maybe that looked really good. I don't know. There's a whole lot of different variables that teams are going to be looking for with a player like Big E, who is really like that space eater. He's going to take up 2 blocks. And, you're going to see that on his film for sure. He does an excellent job with that. Last player is going to be Brew. And, I think that he might still be able to go 5th round. If not 5th, from 5th to being maybe an undrafted free agent. I think that it's possible because he's made so many big plays for Tennessee, so many big catches in critical moments. And, it's just for him, he's a little bit older. I don't want to say that he's injury prone, but just because I don't think that that's true. But he's going to have some answers for what happened with his hamstring. All these players are going to have to answer some tough questions. That's just how this thing works. But I think that Brew's going to do such a good job with his interviews. And I think that looking at him as a guy that could be pretty versatile as far as a wide receiver, inside, outside guy, he's a guy that could play running back for you. He's a guy that could, be like a fullback. He could be an H-back. He could be a tight end. So he can do a multitude of different things. He doesn't mind getting dirty and blocking and being physical. So I could definitely see him ultimately getting drafted somewhere. That's what I'm hoping. I hope that every single one of our players does get drafted, but we all know that that's probably not very realistic. And just because I didn't really hear much about any of those other players, I can't really call it. I'm just going to say the rest of them hopefully will at least be undrafted free agents, but we will see. Again, draft's coming up in about a month and a half. So that's it for this one. Those are my thoughts. Please share yours with me down in the comments section. And as always, please do make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you all in the next one. Thanks. Peace.